What's your favorite film set in LA? Mine is Nightcrawler, a 2014 film written and directed by Dan Gilroy, starring Jake Gyllenhaal and Reen Russo. It's about stringers, freelance photojournalists who make footage for news shows. More than that, it's about the media and consumer culture. The protagonist, Lou Bloom, is a sociopath, and Gyllenhaal offers one of the most chilling portrayals in all of media, all the more terrifying because of how realistic it is. Nightcrawler fits in a few different genres, with thriller as the most predominant one, but there are elements of black comedy, drama, and of course, horror. There are a few scenes that highlight that last part, with Lou's dominating presence overwhelming the screen. He is most reminiscent of Hopkins' portrayal of Hannibal Lecter in Silence of the Lambs. Both work with a very different set of morals, are intelligent and ruthless in their pursuit of their goals, and they embrace violence when it suits them. The character of Lou comes from a few places. The first is Gilroy's script, which began as a biography of Ouija, an American photographer who primarily worked in the 30s and 40s, following emergency vehicles around and selling the photos to newspapers. He was the only photographer at the time who owned a police radio, and he almost always worked at night. The script was originally written in the late 80s, but he shelved the idea when The Public Eye came out, a different film about Ouija. He came back to the project when he learned about stingers, and worked on a more narrative approach. He drew from films like The King of Comedy and The Talented Mr. Ripley to create his anti-hero protagonist, someone the audience could both root for and hate. A big part of this is the score, which treats Lou's successes, however amoral or cruel they may be, as positive things with uplifting music. Gyllenhaal himself also played a large part, not only in acting, but direct involvement with the project from very early on. He met Gilroy months before production began and was interested in the script as soon as he read it. He worked to choose members of the crew and watched audition tapes for the rest of the cast. He also opted for a strict routine before the film, eating only kale salads and gum, and running 15 miles every day. This caused him to lose over 30 pounds, giving Lou his iconic gaunt, angular face. This was because of his view that Lou was a nocturnal predator, like a coyote or a wild cat. These elements come through in the performance, as before making any big decision, he prowls around, as if circling the idea before pouncing. That, as well as his unblinking eyes and fierce stares, create an animalistic impression. The soundtrack also contributes to this, with some tracks that would feel more at home in the jungle than LA streets. This was based on Gilroy's idea that Los Angeles was not just a city, but a primal place. To assist with this, the hills and valleys are shown frequently, emphasizing how close the suburban sprawl is to raw nature. While it's said frequently, the city is really a character in the film, and the streets and highways become familiar over the course of it. The color of the city is captured, with ugly yellows, greens, and grays. Nothing is pure, with a slight off tinge coating the entire range. Despite this, the film is not ugly. It's beautiful in its own way. While the action isn't shot with the master's hands, it's competent enough, but where the real focus is on the human drama scenes, where Lou confronts or is confronted by other characters. The film begins with an act of violence, when Lou is confronted by security while he's in the middle of stealing scrap metal. Because of this, from every moment after, there is the threat of violence hanging in the air, and while Lou's words are often full of platitudes and positive messages, the energy lingers. The dialogue in Nightcrawler is fascinating. Most characters are foul-mouthed professionals, with Lou as the main exception. Almost all of his lines are like a self-help book, management speak without any real meaning. He talks multiple times about how communication is key, but his words are the opposite of communication. He fills up time and space with them, but they're ultimately meaningless. It's clear that even he doesn't buy what he's selling, but he wants others to be lured in by the words. What Lou craves more than anything else is power, and what he hates is being powerless, of failing in any way. There are dozens of moments throughout the film that show this, but one that epitomizes it is during the third act. Rick, his sole employee, is driving with him in the car. Lou asks him to lower the window, and then later when he rolls it back up, he insists the window be lowered. There's no greater purpose for this. He didn't need to shoot video out of it for a clear view or anything. It was about asserting his dominance over Rick, after he had just lost a negotiation. Riz Ahmed, who plays Rick, went and talked to homeless people living in Skid Row in order to understand his character better. He realized many of them had abandonment issues, and he decided to use that in his relationship with Lou. Lou exhibits many classic abusive behaviors, including mixing praise with insults, vague promises of things getting better, and misdirecting blame. Both Ahmed and Gyllenhaal rode with the Rishuk brothers, a group of real stringers, in order to add realism to their characters. The most frightening part of the film is Lou's relationship with Nina, the head of the station that he sells his news to. Nina is played by Rune Russo, who is Gilroy's wife. He wrote the part specifically for her, although he didn't tell her about that until they began pre-production. Lou first cultivates a business relationship, then makes her rely on him, and finally, he pursues a romantic relationship. She denies him in every way she can, but eventually he effectively blackmails her into sex. There are 2 scenes, almost back to back, where he intimidates her, basically putting her livelihood on one end of the scale and his physical needs on the other, and asks her to choose. The most chilling part of it is how realistic it is, as that exact circumstances happened over and over. This is particularly effective because Lou is the protagonist, who we as the audience have been following the whole time, and we're asked to cheer him on, to want him to succeed, but he keeps doing bad things. This in turn makes the audience question themselves, and whether they should have rooted for him in the first place. Much like Walter White in Breaking Bad, it invites the audience to think about who they're watching and how it reflects on them. That ties into the greater themes of consumerism and media violence. Lou is ultimately a product of a broken system. He has a job, filming accidents and violence, because there is a demand for it. The lengths he goes to are not moral or acceptable, but because it produces the product that the audience asks for, it's accepted. Expanding on that, it's ultimately a critique of capitalism and the hidden evils that go into the production of almost all modern products. Nightcrawler is an extremely well-written, well-made film that is elevated even further by fantastic performances, especially by Gyllenhaal. His performance of a realistic sociopath is truly terrifying, and the abusive relationships depicted can make even a horror veteran cringe. The greater themes are more relevant than ever, with the extreme nature of modern media and the feedback loops that are even stronger than they were a decade ago, making the film all the more timeless. I hope you've enjoyed this review. Thank you for watching. Be well.